session is like Wildland, fire mitigation, and FireSmart. We have two presenters in this session. The first presenter is Magda Zachara. She's from FireSmart Canada, and she has 25 plus years of leadership roles in marketing, strategic planning, communication, retail operation, sales, and program management. So since like she's a program manager in FireSmart Canada since 2022. I would like to invite Magda Zachara for the first presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Ooh, I have to raise this. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. It's late in the day. I'm sure there's lots already filling your brain. And so I appreciate this opportunity to be here today to speak to you about FireSmart Canada and some of the programming that we focus on. My colleagues that are from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry of Ontario, they will do the second half of this presentation and they will be virtual. So they, unfortunately, due to some last minute changes, were not able to come in person, even though they meant to. So they will focus more on what they're working on as far as wildfire mitigation is concerned in Ontario specifically. Whereas I talk about FireSmart more on a national scale. Yeah, so I'll just jump in when you have a moment to, yeah, excellent. Okay, so apparently I can control this. So really briefly, I'm not going to spend too much time on the explanation of FireSmart, but are there people in the room that are actually familiar with FireSmart and what it is? You do now. Excellent. Well, it looks like there's a lot of new people, so that's fantastic. So FireSmart Canada is essentially a prevention and mitigation program as far as wildfire risk is concerned. And the reason that I'm here today is to explain a little bit about the mitigation activities that we recommend, because most of them are specifically related to the house, the structure itself, what materials it's built out of, and then the landscaping or the property around it. So I was asked to come here and explain some of that. FireSmart Canada started in Alberta back in the 90s. It's been around for a long time, but mostly it focused on Western Canada, Alberta, and BC, namely. A few years ago, the Canadian Council of Forest Ministers wanted to build FireSmart Canada as a national program. And at that point, they felt it was a good idea to move FireSmart under CIFC. CIFC stands for the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center. And if you're not familiar with that organization, it's a not-for-profit organization funded by provincial and territorial wildfire agencies, as well as Natural Resources Canada. And their main focus is on coordinating resources for wildfire departments across the country. So when there's a lot of wildfire in BC and they need help, they would go to CIFC and ask them to bring in that help from somewhere else in the country, or like this year from other countries, in fact. So we had 14 countries this year helping Canada fight the fires that were going on this season. So now FireSmart is a part of that, but we focus on the prevention and mitigation, whereas CIFC is more response and suppression. So some of our goals is to build collaboration among partners in the public, to create informational products, to educate communities, local government, and just the general public about the mitigation activities that they can take to reduce the risk from wildfire. So I've already kind of talked about the top part, but one thing I want to highlight here is most of the concerns around wildfires is in an area called the Wildland Urban Interface, or WUI as we call it. So I will explain what that is. Do people know what Wildland Urban Interface is? What would that kind of demonstrate? No? Okay, I'll show you a picture of that. But also with the change in climate and the intensity of wildfires increasing, the frequency of wildfires increasing, wildfire agencies can't manage wildfires on their own anymore. Suppression response is not enough. We need to all work together, all levels of government, communities, residents, you name it, builders, developers, need to work together, industry, to prevent wildfire and to reduce risk from wildfire. So that's really what is at the crux of what I do, is I try to bring those groups together to inform, educate, answer questions, and we also run some programs. So Wildland Urban Interface, or intermix, sometimes as it's called, is essentially where the community meets the wildland landscape or the forest or grasslands, you know, in certain scenarios. So what you'll see here on my side of the screen is what would be a true interface, where you basically have a community and then there's kind of a distinct line and then the forest begins. So this is a community that's at risk from wildfire as it comes in from that forest. The other one is what would be called an intermix, where you can see that all the houses are right intermingled with the vegetation, with the forest. And so they're also at risk, even more risk, I would say, than this community on the, whatever that is, right. So FireSmart Canada, we focus on 7 disciplines. Education, of course, is one of the prime ones, as is vegetation management. So wildfire agencies, they do actually a lot of what's called vegetation management to sort of reduce risk from fires. They build fire breaks, they thin, prune, all those kinds of things, but they can only, their jurisdiction is only provincial land. They can't go into the community and do that. So that's where citizens and community members need to do that work and understand what their responsibility is. And of course, interagency cooperation, development, legislation. We do work on some code. We do work with developers on trying to have them build FireSmart developments right from the get-go versus trying to then go back in and retrofit, which is of course always more expensive. Getting started. So FireSmart runs a lot of programming. I won't spend a lot of time on each because I only have about 20 minutes with you, but I do want to just mention a few. And then of course, if you have questions, you can always ask me after or go to our FireSmart Canada website, and these are all explained there. Ultimately, I will mention the FireSmart Begins at Home app. It looks kind of like that black box there in the top corner. It's an app for both Android and Apple. Anybody can download it. It's in English and in French. And that is a self-assessment tool. It's 15 questions that you can walk around your house and answer these questions, and it will quickly tell you how high your risk is from wildfire just based on what your house is made of, what's growing right around it, and what's on your property. So it's a really quick way to sort of learn and understand. FireSmart 101, I'll talk about a bit later. And then we've got some assessment programs. So Advanced Home Assessment and Home Partners are basically assessment programs where we have trained assessors that will go and they will go to a resident home and walk around with the resident, ideally, that's our recommendation. And they fill out a report that then gets emailed to the homeowner or resident, depending on if it's ownership or not. And it really explains all the things that they're doing right, all the things that they could work on to help reduce their risk. It even categorizes as into immediate, like you should really be addressing this right away versus things that they can do down the road. Wildfire Community Preparedness Day is basically the first Saturday of May is the official National Wildfire Preparedness Day. We call it Prep Day, but communities can host their Prep Day anytime throughout the spring, summer, or fall. They can apply for a $500 grant through FireSmart Canada, and they can use that towards their day. And it could be anything. It could be a community cleanup. It could be an education session. It could be both. It's fairly flexible as long as it's related to doing some mitigation activities in the community. Just a little call out for that. The application window starts November 1st until January 31st every year. So it's coming up and it goes through our website. So I encourage all of you to gather your community and apply. The Neighborhood Recognition Program is a program that also focuses on not individual homes, but more specifically a neighborhood where the neighborhood comes together and works together on not just their own properties, but also the common areas of the neighborhood. And so there's a whole recognition program that we have in place for any neighborhood that wants to participate. I will not go into CWPPs that I think Chelsea might cover, so I won't take away from that. Any questions on the programs before I move on? So all these programs really hinge on what we call the home ignition zone. The home ignition zone is essentially up to 30 meters from the property, like the structure, including any attachments. So if you've got an attached deck, then really it starts from the end of the deck out 30 meters. And this is really the area that all of our recommendations focus on as far as reducing risk, starting with the structure itself. So there's a common misconception that most homes burn because of a wall of flames just coming and engulfing your house. What would be another way that a house might burn? Anybody have any ideas? Heat source, yes, fantastic. There's a hat here for you for that. Good job. Okay, anyone else? There's 3 ways that a house will catch on fire: flame, heat source, and one more. Well, yeah, that's true, but I'm talking wildfire here. Sparks. Who said sparks? Fantastic. Yes. And I will tell you, here you go. Or do you want to? I don't have a hat. I just have a t-shirt. So up to 90% of all homes burn, like when we're talking about wildfire specifically, burn due to embers or sparks. So embers are these small, you can imagine a bonfire and you've got things, floating around, but they're usually bigger chunks of hot pieces of bark or, that fly from the forest. They can fly from up to 2 kilometers from where the actual fire is. And what they do is they accumulate, they land on your property, they land on the house, they accumulate. And if there's an ignition source, like let's say your gutters are full of dry leaves, or you've got bark mulch right around the base of your house, or you've got those fun, cute mats, right? Let's say welcome right in front of your door, that will catch on fire. And pretty soon the house starts to burn. And so this is all research based, of course, but what we talk about is if the flame comes within 30 meters of your house will not catch on fire. It's too far away. It will also not catch on fire from heat from that flame because it's too far from the house. And this is all research based, so it's science based. So really, the biggest issues are those embers that fly in and they accumulate within that 30 meters, especially on your house and around the base of it. And so that's why we talk a lot about using non-combustible materials, non-combustible roof, non-combustible siding, double pane windows, what kind of landscaping you use. So, you go out to BC, lots of people have junipers all around their house, like right there. Junipers are one of the highest combustible type of shrubs you could plant around your house. Or if you have, they're literally like fuel. You put a match to them and they just go psh, like crazy. Or let's say cedar shingles. Big problem when it comes to ember accumulation. So this is really what we base all our assessments on. When I mentioned that begins at home app, it asks you those questions. What is your roof made out of? What is your siding like? What's around the 1.5 meters or your immediate zone of the house? The immediate zone should be fully non-combustible. So our recommendations is do not have bark mulch. If you're going to have some decorative, it could be stone or just soil. Try not to have a wooden deck. Well, who doesn't have a wooden deck? Most people do. So we have some recommendations around things like don't store a bunch of junk under your deck or on your deck. Keep it clean. If you can, put sheathing around it. So those are all the types of things that we really focus on to help reduce that risk. This is just a screenshot. So I encourage everyone, there's a free course. It's about 45 minutes long. It's on our website called FireSmart 101. Anyone can access it. And it really explains in more detail what I've just mentioned. It talks a little bit about fire behavior, how fires impact communities and homes, and the mitigation activities that we recommend to reduce the risk from the fire. So highly, highly recommend that if you're interested or if you feel that you are in a community that's at risk to check out the course. Okay, and then this is sort of my last piece that I'm going to spend time on, and this is where I need to switch screens. So we have a document. It's called a Wildfire Resilience Best Practice Checklist for Home Construction, Renovation, and Landscaping. And so this is, I don't have any to hand out, but this is available on our website for download. So you can access it there for sure. And essentially, it was designed with home construction in mind. And it is based on the, it's basically best practices featured in this checklist are based on the National Guide for Wildland Urban Interface Fires, which was put together by Natural Resources Canada. So this is the front cover here. It was also developed in collaboration with Canada Wildfire, which is Department of Natural Resources Canada, and the Intact Center as well, and the University of Alberta, as well as the Canadian Home Builders Association. So they all were participants in putting this together. Couple of things. Of course, this is a national guide. Obviously, there's different codes depending on where you are. So we just always want to highlight that, this may not jive with the local code. So that always supersedes. And also, the other thing that we always remind or just clarify is that everything that we talk about through FireSmart are recommendations and guidelines. They're not standards, they're not codes. And you could do everything right and you still will have, potential for your house burning down. So there's all kinds of variables too. So this is just kind of how it looks. And I haven't been keeping track of time, but so like I mentioned, the property level is really the primary focus first. If you tackle that, then you work your way out to the 30 meters. That's why we call it immediate zone, intermediate zone, and extended zone. In the immediate zone, that's where you want to have as much non-combustible materials as possible. In the intermediate zone, this is where you will reduce the amount of combustible materials, but you could have a few depending on what it is. The other thing that you would not want is things like coniferous trees in the immediate, definitely not in the immediate zone, but it's even in that up to 10 meters. Coniferous trees will burn and they burn at a higher intensity than, say, deciduous trees or shrubs. So landscaping there's all kinds of things you can do with your landscaping. Sometimes people think, oh, I just can't have anything in my yard, and that's not true. So this goes through the property level checklist. What kind of roofing do you have? What kind of flashing? Vents, do you have screens on your vents? What kind of what kind of screens should you have? So you go through the checklist and really it gives you all kinds of information of what you should or shouldn't be using. Talks about the soffits, fascia, and gutters. Certainly all those things should be non-combustible, but in addition to that, certainly like with gutters, you want to keep them clean. You don't want to have a bunch of accumulation of dead leaves and needles, because that's where the embers will accumulate, start on fire. Depending on whether you've got an open soffit, then the flames will get into your attic. Then it talks about exterior siding and cladding. So lots of people, of course, have vinyl siding. Vinyl siding is not a recommended siding by FireSmart because it will melt. So the heat from that fire, if it's within the 30 meters, will melt the siding. So once the siding's melted, then it gets into, the paper and the things that are past the siding, and those are quite combustible materials usually. Windows, doors, skylights. Windows, we talk about double pane windows or tempered glass. Tomorrow I just met this gentleman at dinner last night, but he's in the trade show and he's talking about rock glass, and that's definitely an option. Making sure there's good seals around the doors, around your windows, and it just keeps going out from there. Fencing is an interesting one because lots of people in tighter communities may have fencing, and that's kind of like a wick, right? It goes right to your house. So if the fire starts the fence, like the fence ignites further away, and then it just brings the fire right to your house. So we're not going to tell you get rid of your fence, but perhaps put in a break where you've got a gate or something that is non-combustible within that immediate area that attaches to your house. So these are just all examples. I could be here all day to go through each one, but then it talks about that lot level landscaping requirements. So now we're going outside of the building structure and onto the property within those 1.5 meters, 10 meters, 30 meters. And what are some of the things that you should be thinking about, considering what kind of vegetation to plant or not plant, to remove. As you get into the extended zone, we talk about spacing the trees, pruning them up 2 meters so that if the fire comes along your grass, it won't go into the canopies of the trees because you've pruned the bottom 2 meters. Spacing them 3 meters apart so that the fire can't jump from tree to tree easily. So those are all tips and tricks, but they work and they've been tested. So this is what all this goes through. And I highly recommend that if you are in the building industry or you're a developer or you're in the housing department, these are things that you should be familiar with. And then the last few pages here, I won't really go through, but just wanted to highlight these just get into specifics of acceptable building materials. So it gets really detailed here of like, what are those roof coverings that are acceptable? So metal roofs, asphalt, shingles are fine. Clay, slate. What's not fine is basically cedar shingles. It talks about materials for every part of the exterior of your house. It does also talk, I think, a little bit about landscaping. And it talks about decks. There's a few construction best practices, some designs that are covered here. And then it goes into the extended, intermediate, and like those zones. So that's available on our website. The WUI guide, which is through Natural Resources Canada, is on their website. That gets into all, like, it's 280 pages. So it's very, very detailed. And there is work underway now to convert some of that into actual standards and codes. We're also working with on a developer recognition program so that developers start building the new developments right from scratch as FireSmart. And on the tables, I did leave a couple brochures. There are FireSmart development manuals in case you want to keep one, but that's also available on our website. And lastly, I will just say I brought this. This is not so much about building, but it is a Blazing the Trail Celebrating Indigenous Fire Stewardship book that we put out a couple of years ago. We sell it on our website, but I brought a whole bunch in case anybody's interested in taking one. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hey, Ben, can you share your screen now?
Another portion to this. Just
Yeah, one sec.
Yeah.
It said host disabled screen participant screen sharing.
Whenever you're ready, if you share your screen, I'll bring you up on the main.
It's saying that the host disabled the participant screen sharing. Can you allow me to share the screen?
A second, I'm doing that right now. There you go. It's disabled now.
Thank you so much.
We have another presentation from Chelsea Moseski. She's the lead for the Aviation, Forest Fire and Emergency Service branch for the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Wilkinson. Unfortunately, I am not Chelsea Oseski. She was scheduled here to be with you today. And due to some unforeseen circumstances, neither Chelsea or myself were able to make it in person. So offer our apologies for that. I'm just trying to pull up my camera. But if I can get a thumbs up that everyone can see my screen with my presentation.
We're good, Ben. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, apologies for not being there in person. It's with regrets that I have to do this remotely today. But yes, my name is Ben Wilkinson. I'm the fire advisor at the Aviation, Forest, Fire and Emergency Services branch of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. I'm here today to talk about Ontario's wildland fire mitigation and FireSmart programs, as well as funding and partnership opportunities for Indigenous communities. We'll be focusing on the community planning and building on what Magna just has presented, and I'd like to applaud her in her presentation. It was fantastic, and I think she covered some of the bases that I have here, so that's great. Thank you, Magna. Okay, so first, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry has a wildland fire mitigation program, which provides communities with the support in their risk reduction and planning activities. We're building on the wildland fire mitigation strategy and focusing specifically on wildfire risk reduction. Ontario has an established wildfire mitigation program, which supports the development of partnerships in communities' risk reduction. The mitigation program aims to reduce the hazard in both existing communities and new development areas. One of the ways that we do this is fuel management, built and natural fuels. That's a fuel is a term that we use in fire to describe both vegetation, as in forest species composition, as well as things such as building material, both which apply to housing, vegetation around your house, and the built fuels or structures being managed appropriately can help reduce your risk and build resiliency in your home, neighborhood, and community from wildfire. As you can see, there are a few different planning activities that we have, including education, training, and outreach. We have vegetation management, as I just mentioned, FireSmart program development, community wildfire protection planning, which I will get into in more detail, hazard identification and risk assessment tools, and supporting and implementing planning. So Magna covered beautifully what Wildland Urban Interface, or WUI, is. I will just retouch that WUI is generally described as an area where human development meets or intermixes with the natural environment, as depicted in Magna's pictures and her explanation. Moving on, so wildland fire mitigation and the FireSmart program. Like Magna mentioned, FireSmart is a national program administered by FireSmart Canada. A lot of Magna has already spoken to, but I'd like to note that Ontario, we adapted the FireSmart program in 2004 as part of the Border Wildland Fire Management Program, and we work with FireSmart Canada in partnership to help communities reduce their wildland fire risk and build their resiliency. Magna has already covered two of the key concepts of FireSmart and the 7 disciplines and in the home ignition zones, but a lot of ways you can incorporate FireSmart in your development planning and housing considerations. A lot of our combined work and the work that we do in Ontario is related to FireSmart and focuses on homeowners, neighborhoods, and communities. There are a lot of great resources that can help you plan and prepare for your homes and neighborhoods for wildfire. Some of these resources can be found, and Magda did speak to a few. So there's the FireSmart Begins at Home guide. This is a product that allows individual homeowners to use this manual to take action in their own property and creating a more resilient home. And the idea is that when you start at the homeowner and you build out, you end up with from one FireSmart home to a FireSmart neighborhood to a FireSmart community. There is programs and resources as well. Magna spoke to the Wildfire Community Preparedness Day, which is a great program. There's also the Neighborhood Recognition Program, and as many on their website, including through us, there's plenty of brochures, fact sheets, and guides, and Magna touched on a lot of those as well. When Magna provide you with an overview of FireSmart and building on that, I'd like to speak to specifically, one of the disciplines in vegetation management. A large part of FireSmart program focuses on vegetation management. One example of vegetation management includes thinning. The principles of thinning can be seen in this image. The goal is to change the fuels in the fire's path so that a crowning fuel or a high intensity fuel fire will drop to the ground and eventually hit an area of strong resistance, such as a green cut lawn that's around your home. This thinning and pruning creates what we call a defensible zone that fire departments or fire ministry firefighters and ranger crews or air attack water bombers can be more effective. As you can see depicted in the picture, when you have more understory with ladder fuels that go all the way up, you can see how the fire would creep up, get into those crowns, and now you have a very intense fire moving towards, say, a value or a community. Whereas if you remove those ladder fuels, it'll knock down the intensity, and then it allows our suppression activities, whether it be for water bombers, or if there's sprinklers set up, or if it's crews on the ground, it allows us to be far more successful with our tactics. Here's a before and after picture that what thinning could look like. As you can see, the before picture on the left, we have heavy conner of fuel. We have ladder fuels that would allow fire to climb up and get into the crowns quite easily. And then when you go on the right, you can see what happens after thinning. Still a beautiful lush forest. However, fire intensity would be reduced in this area and allow us to suppress those areas. As well as if you do have a FireSmart community, the fire intensity coming in may stop on its own. Magna also covered part of this, but I will retouch as it is incredibly important. A key element of FireSmart program is reducing the likelihood that wildfires will ignite homes. FireSmart program provides education about the three main ways this can happen: sparks and embers, extreme heat, and direct flame. Ember transport, which is the major cause resulting in the loss of homes, as Magna mentioned, it can be from embers from other burning material that can travel up to 2 kilometers, which means it can get over lakes and roads and all kinds of barriers that we would consider to be a fuel break, but embers can surpass that. Extreme heat, radiant heat from wildfire can melt vinyl, as Magna touched on. It can ignite your home and even break windows. Which again, Magna mentioned beautifully about embers. When it breaks windows, embers can fly underneath or fly through those broken windows and thus igniting from inside the home. And then direct flame, basically that wall of flame coming, or if the property, the home next to the other home lights up and from direct flame touch. So another example of wildland fire mitigation implementation through vegetation management or fuel treatment, decreasing the fuel load around structures. I would like to note that in this picture, this is from a project that we conducted in partnership with Indigenous Services Canada and within a community. So you can see on before, although there were no trees, it was a very open area. The tall grass, especially in the spring when it becomes cured, can be a very volatile fuel that could ignite easily and spread rapidly. And then after, through brushing and grass maintenance, you now will have a low intensity fire that can be put out very easily with a minimal amount of water or even some hand tools. So it just creates that defensible zone that I mentioned earlier. So back to that built fuels, I'll speak to the homeowners and the builders can take steps to increase building fire resilience. We've looked a lot at vegetation management and considerations, but there's also specific considerations that you can do on your home and in your neighborhoods that are specific to structure, or what is often referred to as built fuels. So the deck and porches, I will just say, just something that Magna, she did mention, everyone's got a wooden deck, there is composite. However, one of the things we like to do is make sure that they're capped, whether it's with some kind of barrier. It's not just left open where things can be piled, as Magna mentioned, or if those embers can fly underneath. If there's some type of screening or fencing going around your deck, that'll just stop things from leaves accumulating underneath your property. I won't speak too specifically to some of the options because I think Magna hit it perfectly, and there are lots of resources online to look more specifically on some of those things. Home ignition zone, you saw this in the last slide. Really important to practice and implement FireSmart principles around your homes, communities, and neighborhoods. One way to do that is focus on the home ignition zone. Building on what Magna has already mentioned, as you saw this picture depicted in Magna's presentation, there are specific actions you can take in the immediate, intermediate, and extended zones that will improve your home's chances of withstanding wildfire. So just a different way of explaining the immediate zone is that 0 to 1.5 around. You want meters around your home, non-combustible area that starts with the house and extends to 1.5 meter perimeter from your home and attached structures. Focusing on the intermediate zone reduces the chance of wind-blown embers igniting your home, which goes back to putting skirting on your deck and things of that nature. Intermediate zone, just taking it that one step further. Again, I'm kind of crossover here with Magna. allows focusing on managing elements within so they don't transmit fire to your home. That's that radiant heat. And the extended zone, the goal is to not eliminate fire, but to reduce its potential intensity, which goes back to the vegetation management, the thinning, things of that nature that will just knock that intensity down so that it doesn't become more of an issue. Beyond the ignition zones and looking at the community level, I'd like to talk about community wildfire protection plans. Community wildfire protection helps assess community hazards and determine appropriate mitigation strategies and implementation planning. While the community wildfire protection plans go beyond the homeowner or even neighborhood level, having a community wildfire protection plan for your community can help guide homeowners' actions, identify areas of risk, and determine appropriate plans to lower that risk. This can also help inform where you are building and considerations for the types of structure in high-risk areas. The Community Wildfire Protection Plan creation process also helps assess hazards and risks in infrastructure and individual and private homes, as well as lands and landscape. This helps make a manageable work zone and work to lower the risk in areas of highest priority. So as I spoke before about FireSmart, starting at the home level and building out at the single homeowner, building to a neighborhood, building to a community, this community wildfire protection plan really encompasses the entire community and beyond that, as well as landscape level, forest fuels and things of that nature. So the key components of a community wildfire protection plan are community description, community hazard identification and risk assessment, wildland fire forest hazard mapping, prevention and mitigation planning and strategies, and wildland fire response planning. Reminders that to review your community wildfire protection plans regularly to make sure all information is up to date and accurate as the community changes. And what's always critical is to share it with your local fire management headquarters and regional fire advisor, which is me. Ontario, to help communities, neighborhoods, and homeowners understand how to mitigate and lower their wildland fire risk, we offer a 2-day training course which helps those who take and understand and apply the areas of focus. So the areas of focus when we're talking about community wildfire protection plans are fire in the wildland urban interface, FireSmart precepts, hazard forest assessments, community risk assessment, and development of community wildfire protection planning, and creation of mitigation strategies. FireSmart and community wildfire protection training development work together to ultimately help homeowners, leaders, and community planners. Development of a plan can seem like a big task, but many communities already have an emergency management plan. There's a lot of information that's already available to plug into a community wildfire protection plan. So if a community has an emergency response plan to, say, floods or a wind event or something of that nature, there's going to be a lot of same information that can be used in a community wildfire protection plan to help expedite those that time it would take and the work that goes associated with creating a community wildfire protection plan. This can involve holding meetings to inform community that people will be wandering around to assess their homes and neighborhoods regarding what can be done to lower that risk of wildfire. If you have folks in your community that take the training and they're going to create a CWPP, they're going to go around and assess risk at the individual level, the neighborhood level, and the community level. Part of the training also helps identify and understand hazardous fuels and hazardous forest types. Looking at species composition, the condition, the density, or as we say, the structure, which, laddering fuels, fuel accumulation, which can help give a better understanding of where you want to focus your mitigation strategies. And this is applicable at the homeowner and structure level as well, not just the landscape level. So FireSmart and mitigation funding opportunities. Some examples of previous projects funded through these opportunities are things like community wildfire protection plans, FireSmart crew training, risk analysis, forward hazard risk and risk analysis, fuel treatment planning, infrastructure improvements for FireSmart, waste disposal site improvements for reduction of wildfire impacts, hiring contractors, consultants for development and training and emergency planning, Some of the resources that can be utilized for funding opportunities are Indigenous Services Canada. I've listed some of the links there through Emergency Management FireSmart program or the Emergency Management Assistance Program, and you can see the contact there. FireSmart Canada, also as Magna referred to or spoke to, the Wildland Fire Community Preparedness Day grant, and you can get that on her site, on the FireSmart Canada site, and the Ontario FireSmart Provincial Liaison, Chelsea Oseski, who I work with, and she's a great resource for other opportunities that you may have. In addition, I'd like to speak to some additional resources that we have. So there is the Home Development Guide, the FireSmart Homeowners Resource, Ontario's Wildland Fire Risk Assessment and Mitigation Reference Manual, as well as some Ontario sites on ontario.ca/FireSmart/forest fuels. You can contact myself or Chelsea Oseski at the AFFES, which is the Aviation, Forest Fire and Emergency Services .mitigation@ontario.ca. And just as of this week, the AFFES, the Ministry of Natural Resources for Fire, has developed both a Facebook page at On Fires, Forest Fires Ontario, as well as an Instagram page under the same handle, which are going to be used for promoting FireSmart and other wildfire information. If you would like to request any printed materials, say from anything listed here or from FireSmart Canada, you can contact myself at the AFFES mitigation team in the email that's listed there, and we will be able to help you as best we can. So the Wildland Mitigation and FireSmart contacts, myself is Ben Wilkinson. You can see me listed there as the Northwest region. The other regional advisor is Shane McCool. He's for the Northeast region, as well as Ken Cox in the Southern region of Ontario. That's for FireSmart program, community fire protection plans, and wildfire mitigation. And again, we put that email there for you. The secondary contact, you can see the mitigation partnerships lead, Chelsea Oseski, and there's her email. For forest fire suppression agreements, interagency training, fire advisor service and partnerships, your local fire management supervisors. So Ontario is broken up into fire management sectors, and each sector has a fire management supervisor, and they would be your contacts for that. And your secondary contact would just be your regional fire advisors, as listed there. Would be Shane, myself, or Ken. So I hope everyone got something out of that presentation. And at this time, if anybody has any questions, I would be more than happy to take them.
Thank you, Wayne, for the presentation.
Hello. Question is, are you guys, have you guys given CMHC a list of the materials that are FireSmart for when we do new builds? Because the cost is a lot different than conventional building houses.
You know what, that's a fantastic question. I actually am not sure what conversations have been had about our contacts with CMHC, and I agree, because like composite decking, although the price of lumber has gone up, I know things like composite decking are very expensive, and you know, a tin roof, which I would say is probably the best thing for FireSmart for fire mitigation. For roofing, I know that could be more expensive than your average asphalt shingle. So I'm not sure though, to be honest. I don't know if what conversations have been happening as far as us being a provincial service, and what conversations have happened with CMHC. So if you'd like, I can look into that, and I can reach out to you after that if you want to maybe send me an email, so I have your contact information, but I'm not aware of any conversations that have been happening.
So I could just add to that. So FireSmart Canada has had meetings with CHMC. They are familiar with the guidelines. The WUI guide really highlights everything. And like I mentioned, that's being looked at from a standards perspective. But we are also just currently working on a project that will develop a material list with costings associated with it. So there is a sort of like a guide per se to show, okay, if you select these materials, these are the types of costs you can expect. But obviously that will range and change depending on where you are.
Yeah, because we don't get the funding to put the tin roofs on the houses, as for being
Mhm.
an intermix, I guess, with my community is that we are an intermix. And we don't have the fundings when we're given to build homes or to do a renovation to put the tin on the houses.
Okay. Yeah, so I can take that away and look into it further. Mhm.
Maybe we don't have question. We are running out of time.
So during the evacuations in Pikangikum in 2019, when you talk about embers flying 1.2 kilometers, it's true. On the school, we would find just a couple days when the fire was close, it was maybe closer to 2 miles. We would find embers on the school, like I'm talking branches that were burnt. The community, when we woke up in the community, it was all, there was like a layer of snow. There's ashes, so. Yeah, and I know a lot of our communities, we've been doing some work with fire, with our emergency operations with Nicholas Roan, but we still have a long ways to go. To cutting trees and making those fire breaks, because when it does come, it's scary.
Mhm. And it comes quick.
Yep.
right? Yeah.